Okay, so let's open up to Life Science on page 520. Lesson 2. Let's look at the learning objective, the key ideas, what you will learn in this lesson. Key ideas of cell processes and energy. In photosynthesis, plants use light energy to form glucose, which is another word for sugar, from carbon dioxide and water. Oxygen is a byproduct. In cellular respiration, glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen to release energy. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct. These two processes help maintain oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Let's look at the top of page 520, first paragraph. All cells need energy to carry out the life function, such as growth and reproduction. Green plants, some algae, and some bacteria uses energy from sunlight to make food in a process called photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, plants use sunlight to power chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide gas and water into oxygen and the simple sugar, glucose. In the first stage of photosynthesis, light energy is captured by chloroplasts inside plant cells. Chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, a pigment that gives plants their green color. So I hope you're reading and following along in your book. Chlorophyll absorbs light energy for photosynthesis. In the second stage, water, H2O, that the plant gets from the soil and carbon dioxide, CO2, that the plant gets from the air, undergo a complex series of chemical reactions inside the chloroplasts. The products of these reactions are oxygen, O2, and glucose, CH06. And you see the symbols there, C6H12O6. Plant cells use the energy that is stored in glucose to power cell processes. Photosynthesis can be summarized in the chemical equation shown below, light energy. And look at this equation. So 6CO2 plus 6H2O, and then this arrow there in the middle illustrates that a chemical reaction has occurred, and then the result is C6H12O6 plus 6O2. And we have an example of that actual process of photosynthesis. So that's what's happening in that chemical equation. This is what's being produced from the, and what are the byproducts? Sunlight energy. And the process is given in the paragraph that we just read. The first stage, the second stage, here's what's happening. And then plant cells use the energy that is stored in glucose to power cell processes. Photosynthesis can be summarized in the chemical equation shown below. And there it is. And we're illustrating it in a graph. In words, next paragraph. In words, this means that carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light energy yields glucose plus oxygen. So the first two, if you look back up in the first paragraph, it's telling you you're converting carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light energy. And it yields what? Glucose and oxygen. Let's look at the next paragraph. As a result of photosynthesis, energy is stored in sugars and other carbohydrates in the plant. To meet their energy needs, other organisms eat plants or eat organisms that eat plants. When energy is needed in a cell, carbohydrates are broken down to release the energy in a process called cellular respiration. In this process, oxygen from the air reacts with glucose from food to yield carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Cellular respiration can be summarized in the following chemical equation. Okay, so let me shift and pull up the little diagram we have that illustrates cellular respiration, where you can see the actual process. So I think we have a graph. Yeah, we have a graph. Okay, here you are. So the release of energy through cellular respiration. So you see glucose plus oxygen. And let's see here if I can show you. Okay, we need a pen. And we got one. So this is the result of this and that, right? And of course, this arrow here tells us that this formula creates that, carbon dioxide and water. That's what they're sharing with you in the second paragraph there. Let's look at the next paragraph. In other words, this means that glucose plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And if you examine last paragraph at the bottom of page 520, if you examine the two equations, you will notice that the products of photosynthesis are the raw materials of cellular respiration, and the products of cellular respiration are the raw materials of photosynthesis. These two processes are part of a cycle. Plants release oxygen, a waste product of photosynthesis, and it's released into the atmosphere. Animals breathe in the oxygen and use it in cellular respiration. They breathe out, animals breathe out, humans breathe out carbon dioxide, a waste product of cellular respiration. The carbon dioxide is then used by plants in photosynthesis, and the cycle continues to repeat. Between them, photosynthesis and cellular respiration help keep the amounts of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere fairly constant. So that actually ends this lesson 2 on page 520, and we will stop here. Well, wait a minute, just one more thing before we close out. Okay, let me get a blank screen so I can show you something, because I've had a question on it, and we may do a separate video to explain it even further. Okay, so let me write this out for you. So a symbol, let's just say this symbol represents oxygen, right? So what does that symbol represent? Well, a symbol represents one atom, because people are asking how to read this. And we'll probably do an entire separate video for clarification on it. And uppercase and lowercase is important, because sometimes you'll find symbols that C and lowercase, well, those are together, and this particular one is chlorine, okay? And then you'll find, well, that's chlorine, see? And what that tells me is that chlorine has how many atoms? 2 bonded atoms. Okay? So let's look at this one. I'm just going to do this kind of quick and then we're going to close out. Oh, 3. Oops. It's a 3. Okay. So what do we have here with those symbols? The element potassium, I was going to shorten it just to make it fast. Potassium. And the symbol, of course, is what for potassium? K. And then we have carbon. And the symbol for that is what? C. And oxygen. And of course the symbol for oxygen is O. Now, what are the number of atoms in each of these that we see up here? How many atoms up here? Okay, so potassium has, the K represent what? The molecule, right? And if it's no subscript, see that this little 2 here, we call that a subscript. So if the K had no subscript, then it automatically has what? Look up here, 1 atom, right? So in this case, it has a subscript of 2, so it has 2 atoms. Carbon has no subscript, so it has how many atoms? 1. And oxygen has a subscript. So how many atoms is there? You tell me. Well, if you said 3, that is correct. 3 atoms. So this is the molecule, 1 molecule of oxygen with 1 atom. 1 molecule of potassium with 2 atoms. Okay, and then someone asked me about this. Well, if we had H2O plus H2O plus H. And there's a little bit more we could discuss about this, but I'm just trying to do something very brief so you can get a general idea how to read this, H2O. So actually, those are what? Oxygen, right? H2O. Well, you could, like you would in math, you could combine those. And if you did, it would read like this. 3H2O. Now this 3 is a coefficient, and it means 3 for the entire symbols, right? So there are actually 3 H2Os, and each one of these 3's have 1 hydrogen molecule, and each one of them have 2 hydrogen atoms and 3 oxygen molecules and 1 each oxygen atom. Okay, you see how I combined this from that. Okay, if need to, we're thinking about it, we may just make a separate video on how to read this because there's a little bit more about it, but this is just briefly how you would look at persimmons and read it. Okay? All right, we'll stop here.